Welcome into episode 108 of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm Augustrometer.
And we are going on vacation. No, wait. We're going on a business trip. No, the house is being fumigated. Don't ask. And we have to check into a hotel. There's good news. The hotel has free Wi-Fi. The bad news, I didn't set up security on the hotel Wi-Fi. I don't know who's staying in the room next to me, and I don't know what they're up to. And then this scary message just popped up on my screen saying that the Wi-Fi connection exposes all network traffic. What do you do? Stay tuned to this episode of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. So we got this email from John a few weeks back with a ton of questions about logging into hotel Wi-Fi. And I will say they're questions about which I wonder when I check into a hotel, but I only check into a hotel a few times a year at most. Business travelers may have this stuff down, but for the rest of us, the occasional trip may leave us with a bit of surfing concern. So John sent us a series of questions that August is going to tackle, and I may have a few questions of my own. Let's start with that scary message you get when you log into not just hotel Wi-Fi, honestly, but a lot of times just any public Wi-Fi, the one that says the connection exposes all network traffic. Can you clarify what exposes all network traffic means? I know it sounds simple. The thing is, I don't know that we all know what it means. Sure.
Well, first of all, thanks, John, for the questions. Some questions just write themselves, and it was really nice for you to write the questions for us. So that's to everybody. Hey, if you've got questions, send them.
Checklist at SecureMac.com. And I'll remind you again later. But yes, I mean, we always say if you got a topic, if you got a question, send it in because, it makes our job easier coming up with show ideas. Checklist at SecureMac.com. All right. So to John's first question, can you clarify what exposes all network traffic means?
Sure. So if you think about your network at home, when you connect to your Wi-Fi router, unless it's been hacked or it's got a virus or, all those other crazy things that are going on, but assume best case scenario for your own personal equipment, there's really nobody in the room that's going to steal your signal. There's no one who's going to be sniffing your network and checking out, what you're doing. And you should feel relatively safe connecting to the internet and doing the things that you need to do. When you are on a public Wi-Fi network, and that's whether it's at a hotel or a cafe or, just some mall somewhere that happens to offer free Wi-Fi, that network is available to everybody. So a hacker could potentially put some sort of network sniffer on there, and they would be able to see all unencrypted traffic. So if you're sending unencrypted messages to somebody, they get to see those messages. If you connect to an unencrypted website and log in with an unencrypted password, they get to see what that password is. So that's what it means by exposes all network traffic. Everything that you do is visible, and your only defense at that point is to encrypt it so that what is visible is basically gibberish to them.
All right, there's a lot about this that confuses me, though, and I think this is where, I don't know if Hollywood has done us a service or a disservice at this point. Like, when you say, I log into an unencrypted website, the hacker can see that. They're not actually seeing the website. I mean, what are they seeing? They're not seeing me log into, cutepuppy.com or whatever stupid unencrypted website I'm logging into. I mean, what is the thing that they actually see, or is there a thing they see, or is it just siphoning info at that point?
So they would see which website that you've connected to. So happypuppy.com. And then they would see your username and password for happypuppy.com. That's if it's not encrypted. The best way to check to see if it's encrypted, just look in the URL bar, make sure it's got the little lock next to the URL. Especially these days, you want to see, green is the color of du jour in terms of highest level of encryption. And that's sort of what you want to see. And if you have that when you use a website, then hackers can't see that.
So I think you've just answered part of John's next question. Can the hacker merely see it, or can they also harvest that data? If they can see your username and password, then, seeing it and saving it are pretty much the same thing. I wonder if he's asking sort of the Hollywood kind of question, right? Because when we saw this stuff in like 95, 96, when bands of hackers were, either saving the planet or trying to destroy the planet, movies and TV sort of indicated that we were watching it happen real time on the screen. Like I was typing in my password, somebody was sitting someplace else and seeing me type in my password. When we say they see the username and password, it's not like the shady guy in the corner is watching that happen. It's more like the shady guy in the corner is picking up everybody's unencrypted information that's on the network.
Correct, but they can trace it back to your particular IP address,
right?
And then put it all together as coming from one computer.
Right.
So when they see that your password is 12345, then they go, wow, that's the same as my luggage. And then they say, hey, now we know how we can log into happypuppy.com and pretend we're this guy.
Right. Which, who cares if it's happypuppy.com, but if it's, your bank is going to be encrypted, obviously, but you're not necessarily going to be, though, if you're given that information. This is where it all gets confusing. But let's come back in a second.
It gets super confusing, and I'm going to confuse it just a little bit more.
Oh, good.
Yeah. When you walk into a hotel and you see, let's say it's Wilson's Hotel, and you pull up the Wi-Fi and it says Wilson _hotel _guest. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wow, that sounds like me, because I'm a Wilson Hotel guest. It may not be Wilson Hotel that's putting that Wi-Fi signal out there. So you actually may be connecting to a hacker's computer. And that's what they call a man-in-the-middle attack, where he sits there and he goes ahead and passes your traffic along, but he just kind of watches everything that goes through his computer, which is a whole lot easier than sniffing and trying to assemble all of that data. You've basically connected to his computer and given him license to see everything, unless, of course, it's encrypted. So it gets really, really tricky. Your best bet when you go to someplace that has free Wi-Fi is to talk to somebody of authority and make sure that you're connected to the right one, especially if they have a lot of them that look similar. If you've got Wilson Hotel Guest 1 and Wilson Hotel Guest 2 and Wilson Hotel connect to this one, then you should probably start wondering, do I really want to connect to any of these? And talk to somebody at the front desk and make sure you're connected to the right Wi-Fi name.
It is, yeah. There have been hotels that I've checked into in the past where it seems obvious that the manager of the hotel just kind of set up the Wi-Fi. And I don't know if he was supposed to do that based on some other something, but you'll call the front desk and they'll say, yeah, no, this is it. Now, of course, I don't know how much the person at the front desk is making. They could easily set up a second account or a second, hotspot and then just say, oh, yeah, no, yeah, use this one that says use this one. But I guess you have to trust somebody at some point. So the person at the front desk.
Well, and if the person at the front desk also tells you just connect to the one that says Linksys, then you should probably pay an extra $20 a night and go to the hotel next door, because that Wi-Fi is completely unsecure.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. But okay. Here's the thing. It had sort of looked like we had a series of questions that we were going to ask in a series sort of way. But more and more questions keep coming up. So there are things like the next part of John's question was, So can a hacker merely see, the traffic, or can they actually see? It almost feels like he's asking, can they actually see what's on the screen? For example, if I go and log into my email, okay, if there's a hacker out there, they now have access to my username and my password. He's then wondering, can they see what's actually in the body of the email? And I'm guessing the answer is no, he can't see what's in the email on my screen. Like he can't see a hyperlink that's on my screen, or he can't see an iCloud document that's on my screen. But that doesn't matter because he's got my username and password. He can see it at his leisure at that point. I mean, when you say things like exposes all network traffic, and we're getting stuck on that because I think that's the scary sort of message.
Sure.
But when it says that, does that mean it can see what is on my screen, or is it just that now it's got a wedge that it knows, okay, well, I use this username and password to get there, and I can look over all of it. I don't have to worry about, what this one person is seeing.
Sure. No, that's a really great question. And sometimes it's easy to kind of gloss over that sort of thing. So I apologize, because it is a really important question. The bottom line is traffic means any data that goes from your computer to another computer, or data that comes from another computer to your computer. So while they may not be able to see, let's say, what's actually on your screen, because you look right now at my screen, and I'm recording this podcast, so I've got QuickTime up and running. Well, that's not really, there's nothing networky going on there. I'm not transmitting any data to any server anywhere, so there's no traffic as far as that app is concerned. So a hacker would not be able to see that I'm running QuickTime. But if I sent you a text message, now all of a sudden I'm transmitting information from my computer to a server somewhere else, and they could potentially see what's in that message. Now, if that message is encrypted, then we're okay. We're safe. If it's not encrypted, that's when we have problems, because they can see the entirety of that message. They can see any URLs that I send. They can see just about anything. And it goes the other way around too. If I get an email that is unencrypted, and it has a URL in it, for example, a URL with a link to a Google Doc or a iCloud document, then the hacker would be able to see that link, and they would be able to, copy it into their own browser and then access it. If it's something that doesn't need a password.
So, I mean, it really sounds like a lot of the answers to a lot of John's questions are, I don't know. I don't know if the answers are yes and no, or if it's just, it's almost like an elaborate if this, then that. Like the answer to all these questions might be no, but it doesn't matter because we already said yes to the first one. Like he then wants to know, okay, well, how about the contents of the inbox, the sender's address? I mean, can hackers see those things? I almost don't care what the answer is at that point, because if they've got my email login and my password login, right, that's the ball game. Even if they don't see it in the 5 minutes that I'm at the coffee shop really quickly doing something, if I logged in while I was there with my password while I was there and they were able to catch that no, it doesn't matter how short that window was. They've now seen how to open that window, and they may get around to it. They may not. Right.
And again, it comes back to encryption. Everything sort of revolves around that. If your transmission is encrypted, then you're safe. If it's not, then you're not. And to kind of simplify that, if you grew up in a large family, and you had a lot of landlines around the house, you had, a phone in the kitchen, and then you had one in the den, and then everybody had one in their bedroom. And, sometimes you picked up the phone and your sister was talking to her boyfriend, or your brother was talking about, Little League or whatever. That's sort of what listening in on Wi-Fi is. Whereas if it's encrypted, it's sort of like your sister talking in code to her boyfriend, where something's going on, you just don't understand what it is. And as long as, everything is encrypted, the hacker really doesn't have a lot to work with. And there are some vulnerabilities that have been, that have popped up over the past, year or so. And I'm trying not to throw those in because it gets really complicated really fast. But in general, if your communications are encrypted, you should be okay.
More public Wi-Fi Q&A in a moment, but first, a word about MacScan 3 from SecureMac. You've heard me say this before. You've heard this before. People have always thought, or for a long time have thought, that having a Mac was all of the protection you needed against malware. Of course, if you're listening to this show, and if you have been for, golly, I don't know, more than 2 weeks, you know that that's just not the case anymore. More and more people are using Macs. More and more people are doing more with Macs, and that gives hackers more and more reasons to attack them. Staying ahead of the bad guys is important, and MacScan 3 can help. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Give worry the boot with MacScan 3 from SecureMac. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by SecureMac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. John's a MacScan fan, by the way. He said that at the end of his email, because we're not reading the whole email verbatim, but he did say he's a MacScan user. So thanks, John, and thanks again for your questions as well. All right, we're moving away from the inbox now to some other things that we might do on our computers with the public Wi-Fi questions that John sent in. I use a subscription app, for example, the Wall Street Journal, that has login embedded so that when I select the app, I'm connected and logging in for viewing. Can someone hacking a network view and get this auto login password? If I have a brokerage app that has preset company names that I can see today's stock prices when I open the app, can the hacker see the same thing, thus knowing what companies I have listed? What about the Maps app? Can a hacker see results of my searching requests, for example, restaurants near me? I couldn't figure out why you would care about, can they see what I've searched, except, of course, yes, I can see where the near me part of it would suddenly be, oh, now I know where John is. But what about all those questions? I'm going to guess, based on what you said earlier, that comes back to the, is it a secure login thing, right? Like, is the app for the Wall Street Journal going to an HTTPS, or is it just going to, HTTP?
You're dead on. If the apps are using encrypted communications, you're good. If they're not, then it's probably something that somebody can see. I will say, I did check, and Maps itself, is a secure connection. So you don't really have to worry too terribly much about that one. Third-party apps, it's sort of hard to tell. I would suspect that if it's a financial app of any sort, it's probably encrypted, but you should really double check that. And honestly, I sort of have a rule to never, ever log into anything, that has anything remotely to do with money. So nothing to my bank or to a brokerage or anything where somebody can actually see what I'm doing, even if it's encrypted. And that's when I'm on a public network. I just think you're just asking for trouble at that point, because you're giving away not only balances, you're giving away account numbers and all of the personal information that might be associated with that account. So you should be very, very careful when on a public Wi-Fi network, connecting and looking at your own personal financial information. Like, I don't care if anyone knows that I invest in Apple or Microsoft or whatever. That doesn't bother me that they know which stocks I invest in. What bothers me is if they would know what brokerage, how much I've invested, and how to transfer those investments to their own accounts. That's what scares me.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on at what point you're going to be more paranoid or at what point you're going to be more concerned, right? Like if nobody knows what I invest in, then there's less of a chance of getting me with a phishing attack by naming those, right? At which point am I going to be more concerned? Do I have to guard against, misinformation coming into my inbox more strongly than people finding out ways that they might be able to target me? I would think there's a thing, and I loved your visualization, by the way, before the break about the party line and things like that, because it's so easy to talk about these things and they sort of become like techno magic. They become like things that we understand but we can't really see. And there's one thing that we hit on a few I don't know if it was months back or it might even been over a year ago now in another episode of The Checklist with Nicholas Raba and Nicholas Tachek. Apps are the internet. I mean, they're not the internet, but they are. Like, you don't think, like, if I go to a website, right, then I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going on the internet, and so I need to be careful of all this stuff on the internet. Whereas if I'm going to an app on my phone, it's an app. What do I care? And so if I'm on Wi-Fi, at the local coffee shop or at the hotel, and I'm on my phone or I'm on my iPad, if I'm logging into an app, I mean, that's still information. And so you still have to know, is your connection secure? Is the thing you're connecting to secure? Are you actually, is the app that you're using actually from the place that it's supposed to be from? I mean, I think a lot of times we think, well, apps are safe. Because it's not like I'm going online, but but the app is online. So yes, you are. Absolutely.
The amount of communication that goes on sort of under the hood, it defies explanation. It really does, because there's just so much communication back and forth between most modern apps and remote servers. There used to be this concept where you could log into anywhere and you'd have what they called a thin terminal, where, it essentially was kind of the idea of a browser, but it was more of an app. And that's exactly what we've got dozens of thin terminals on our phones where, we launch an app and it shows us the weather, but behind the scenes, it's checking your location. It's transmitting that location back to some other server. It's getting weather information. It's pulling that forward. It's pulling radar information forward. It's pulling forecast information forward. The amount of communication that goes on when you launch an app is incredible. And really, you're wise to keep that in mind anytime you connect to a network, because that's the other thing. Is a lot of these apps work in the background, especially on your Mac, but also on your phone. So as soon as you're connected to a network, they go, oh, I've got juice. And they start doing all these things, and they're checking your email, and they're, getting all of this stuff that you've set up. And that's the kind of information that you don't realize you're transmitting, even though you are. And a hacker can grab that if it's not encrypted.
Turning our attention to the web, specifically, like I know I'm going to the web as opposed to just using an app, so it's not a big deal. In Safari, John wants to know, can a hacker record my surfing sites, view my data entry, for example, see the zip code that I put in on the weather app? I mean, this is the same answer, right? If what you're putting it into is encrypted, the answer is no. If what you're putting it into is not, the answer is yes.
Correct.
Okay. Apple issues an OS update. If it requires Wi-Fi, is there any vulnerability when updating?
Now, here's a tricky question, because in a perfect world, there's no vulnerability here. But if you've connected to a man in the middle and they have their own version of the OS update and you download that, then you've got problems. Is that a far-fetched example? Probably. When you look at a lot of these things, it's like how much effort is going into it by the hacker for how much reward. And at a small hotel, you're probably not that vulnerable, although at larger hotels, you become more and more vulnerable. It's big conventions where you've got, 10,000 people show up. And boy, that's just an open basket of diamonds for hackers to go, hey, let's go grab some jewels. And so if they can convince you to connect to the wrong machine and download their version of Apple's software, then you've got a problem. So yeah, don't do that on public Wi-Fi. Do that at home.
All right, so we've talked a lot about public Wi-Fi, and I know when you and I were talking off mic earlier, you said there is a simple solution, and I think at the end of all of his questions, John gets to this simple solution. Are the vulnerabilities the same using a cellular network with Wi-Fi disabled?
They're not the same. You are much, much, much safer using your cellular network. It's a lot harder for a hacker to sniff that network. It's a lot harder for a hacker to be the man in the middle. Maybe even impossible with the way SIMs work, SIM cards, that is. So yes, it's a much better way of connecting. And in some cases, it's better to pay the extra $20 a month for unlimited bandwidth than it is to pay the $20 a day at a hotel and be sort of at risk. That said, cellular networks can be slower.
I would say it also depends too, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're going to have to balance risk reward. I mean, yes, $20 a month extra. I've done this plenty of times when I'm going on a trip I'm driving across the country or something like that. I'll actually turn on a personal hotspot just for that amount of time because 51 weeks of the year I don't need it. I don't want to pay extra for it 51 weeks of the year, but for that 1 week, I'm happy to go ahead and pay extra and then cancel it for that month. I'm in sort of a weird place though, and I would imagine there are people listening who are in sort of this weird place as well. That's fantastic if I want to stream Netflix in the hotel. That's fantastic if I want to do regular web surfing in the hotel and not worry as much to have that personal hotspot. If I want to upload a 10-minute podcast at 2 a.m, it might only take me 2 hours because the upload for cellular is terrible compared to the download. So at that point, yeah, the extra $20 is great, but then you run into so many problems at that point. I would think the extra $20 might be a great thing if all you're doing is surfing, if all you're doing is consuming. If, on the other hand, you're producing, there are a lot of other security things that you might want to bear in mind because the cellular, unless you have just the best network in the world and nobody else is on it and the moon is in Sagittarius, maybe. I don't know. It's going to take you an incredibly long time to do audio or good grief, video work if you're actually on the road trying to do that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And you do have to balance risk and reward. And using the cellular network is a great way to basically avoid any risk at a hotel or a convention or at, wherever you have public Wi-Fi. That said, there's one other solution that we've talked about, on the show before. I think before my time, you guys even did a whole show on it. But get a VPN, get a trusted VPN, and then you don't have to worry about a lot of things.
Right. Get a trusted VPN, though. If Facebook says, hey, we have a new VPN, yeah, don't do that one. And August is right. Yes, I actually have it here in my notes. Episode 19 of the checklist was all about VPNs. They make it safer to do things like log into a hotel or log into hotel Wi-Fi, log in using hotel Wi-Fi. At that point, I guess would be the best way to put it. I always have that moment of, okay, well, how long do I have? Because sometimes And this starts to feel ludicrous. But it's like, okay, so I have to log into the hotel Wi-Fi before I activate the VPN a lot of times, right? And like that split second, am I okay for that split second? Just in that amount of time?
No.
What? You're killing me.
I would make sure that any apps that send login information, for example, your mail app, maybe some of if you've got stuff in sort of the utility bar area, anything that's transmitting account information, just quit it before you connect, and then launch your VPN, and then relaunch those apps. That's the safest way to do it. In practical terms, I'm not going to tell you that you're going to be safe, but like I said earlier, it's about how much work the hacker is willing to do to get what they want. And, you're probably going to be okay. But if you really want to be safe, quit all those apps first, launch the VPN, log into your hotel Wi-Fi, launch the VPN, and then relaunch those apps. And you should be a lot safer.
Well, the place to find the information that we did a while ago on VPNs, SecureMac.com/checklist. As I say, that is episode number 19 of the checklist. So you can go there, SecureMac.com/checklist. You can find episode 19. Heck, you can find episode 18 and episode 20 and all the other episodes that we've done, and notes for all of them too. SecureMac.com/checklist. I got to thank John for writing in. Because you made the show, John, and you actually answered a lot of questions for me that I've had, and hopefully we've done the same for you. Everybody else, you see, this actually works. What John did was he wrote to checklist at SecureMac.com with his question or his topic he would like to hear us hit, and then we answered his questions and we hit the topic. Be like John. Checklist at SecureMac.com. That address again is checklist at SecureMac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.